Okay. This is Mixed Bag at Belmont Story Swap, September 20, 2021.
One.
Too many 20s.
Yeah.
For our story, we now have Beverly Schwartz.
Good evening. Well,
Oh.
when I was a kid, I never got to go to a circus. I saw them on TV. And I was teaching second grade. I didn't have a big budget to, afford to go to the circus. Now my kids came in and said, the circus is in town. The circus is in town. Oh my God, the circus is in town. Can we go? Can we go? I'm going, what? It's 8:30, 8:45 in the morning. He said, yes, they parade up from the Hudson River where the railroad tracks are next to it. And they walk all the ways up to from the 1st Street, all the ways to 20th Street. And there they stay for the week at the field house at RPI, Rensselaer Polytech Institute College. Well, let me check to see if it's okay. And I went next door to the other second grade teacher, goes, oh yeah, the whole school, the whole city goes. They're going to be lined up on either side. And the best place to be is in the very top of the hill, because you're the last person to see them and they slow down by then, and you can see them starting to even set up. So I got in my room and the silence, and they looked at me and I said, we're going. And then we all jumped, yay! And off we went. We walked down to the 17th Street, up a couple streets to 20th, and there we waited. And we could hear the circus coming up the hill and the people cheering and screaming and yelling in excitement of seeing the circus, because we were an inner city school and most of our city couldn't have afforded the circus. Well, because we were last, we got to see, first of all, came the clowns, followed by the elephants. They had to walk up the hill, and the horses, and everyone, all the performers were dressed up, and they had the motorcycles, vroom, 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 and they had all the children from the circus come up, and we got to see the whole circus come and enter the side of the field house. Now, as they passed everyone else, the big crowd started, going back to their schools and houses and everything. But we were at the very top, my class. And the clown came over with all the kids, and all of a sudden my kids were playing with their kids. And the clown came up and says, my kids don't get to play with a lot of kids, so do you mind if they stay a while? I said, sure. And they were, throwing things up and down and trying to teach the kids things. And they said, would you like to see the animals? And I said, we have to get back to school. And the clown says, well, we'll see you at the circus, won't we, kids? And there was silence. We can't afford to come. This was what our seeing the circus was. And I said, yeah, I've never even been to a circus myself. And the clown looked at me. Meet me here tomorrow at 9, just your class and you and no one else. Well, the circus doesn't start till 2. Meet me here at 9. The kids didn't know anything about it. So we waved to the clown finally, and we said goodbye to the kids, and off we went back to school. The next morning, I never had said a word. I said, get your coats on. We're going to go take a walk. The kids said, where are we going? I said, I need to take a walk. We just have to get out. I feel like walking today. They looked at me like, what is she up to now? Because I was always doing weird things with them. And we went to the field house, and there in the corner of the building was the clown. He said, I knew you were going to come. And I said, you're right. And he says, I'm going to give you a tour of the outside of the field house to get you to see what a real circus does when they're not performing. We saw the elephants getting, their baths and taking their water and putting it on their backs. We saw the tigers being fed and the lions. We saw them braiding the horses. We saw the clowns were putting on all their makeup. We saw all they looked like the ballerinas, all the acrobats and stuff, doing all their stretches. And then out came the kids again, and they were just playing with my class. And we walked around with them to the back of the field house where the doors were wide open. And he said, I would like to have your class come and sit. We're going to have, since it's our first performance, we have to have a rehearsal. And as we approached the back of the field house, we could smell the popcorn starting to be popped for the performance that day. The candy, that they were just spinning around, cotton candy. And the balloons were being all blown up for the people that would be buying them. Well, I said to my kids, you can't get out of your seats. No one even knows we're here. So I don't want anyone getting hurt. I hadn't even tell anybody where we were going. Today, you can't get that, do that. So there we sat, just my class. And the clowns come up and they give us popcorn, hot, smelly, buttery popcorn. And then they gave us the cotton candy. And I said, oh boy, sugar high, here we come. And we sat there. And first came the horses running around, and then the elephants came in, and they even had a camel in those days. And we saw them perform. They had the nets up, and the acrobats would be practicing, and some would fall. My kids go, oh! But the nets caught them. We saw the whole circus that day. My God, I had never even been to a circus. And when they were done, the clown came over and said, well, we're done practicing. And I'm so happy your kids and you got to see the P.T. Barnum Circus. And he said, I have a gift for you. I want you to always remember and come to the circus. And I will always be here with every class that we come to town and help just you. But shh, it's our secret. And then he said, I'm an artist. And I'm going to give you 4 pictures that I drew of myself dressed up as a clown. And they liked them so much, my oil paintings, they reproduced them and they sell them at the circus. And they gave me 4 of his pictures and a beautiful P.T. Barnum photo. And as we walked out, the kids were given more popcorn, more cotton candy, and they were given balloons. And I said to the kids, what do we say to the clown? Well, instead of saying anything, they all hugged him, and we did one big giant hug and thank you from the real bottom of my heart and their hearts. And to this day, I still have those 4 pictures of that clown gave me. And I'm going to share you one picture that sits in my living room on the wall of the day we went to the circus and the clown gave us a picture for us to always remember him. I'm going to get my picture. And here, da-dum, smell the popcorn, smell the cotton candy. But here comes the picture of a lifetime that I got in 1974. This was the clown who gave my kids an experience of a lifetime. Thank you. I have 4 of these, all different, that he drew. He was so proud of what he did.
Beverly, you've transported me. You have a way. But if I've never seen your way with the circus before. Thank you. A sister moved from California to Florida. And only then was I aware of how much space that Barnum and Bailey took up in Florida. It's not there now, but it's been repurposed, I think.
And what happened after that was they built a Times Union Center, and they never came back to Troy. They went to Albany after that. So it was an experience that never could happen again to other classes.
Congratulations. Thank you, Beverly.
Thank you.
Now, Andre Wilson.
Thank you very much. This is an Aesop fable. The miller, his son, and their donkey. On one hot day, the miller and his son decided to walk their one donkey to the market to sell because they were poor, didn't have enough to eat. So they were walking out in that hot sun with their donkey, dripping bullets of sweat. And by, as they went down that path, they came upon some girls who started laughing at them. Look at those two. It's a hot day and they are walking behind the donkey. How foolish of them. Look at those two. So the miller turned to his son and said, well, we might as well get some use out of our donkey here for its last trip to town. So he picked up his son and put his son on the back of the donkey. And they kept going down the path, down the path, down the path, until finally they passed some old men sitting on some benches and watching the world go by. And the old men said, the young people nowadays don't have the respect for their elders. Look at that boy up on that donkey, riding it while his poor old father is trailing in the dirt. Kids have no respect nowadays. And so the father took his son off the donkey, and he put himself on the donkey. And he began to go down the path, down the path. The boy walking alongside the donkey and the father on the donkey's back. By and by, they came upon some old women. And an old woman looked and said, for shame, look at that man riding on the donkey while his poor son is trailing in the dirt behind. That boy must be tired. How shameful of that man to be riding that donkey while his son is walking in the dirt behind him. And so the miller decided to pick up his son and put him on the back of the donkey, right behind him. And so the two were now riding the donkey into town, riding the donkey, riding the donkey, riding the donkey. By and by, a man saw them and said, how outrageous. You two people are on that poor donkey. You two are so heavy. I bet you can carry that donkey instead of the donkey carry you. How insensitive are you to this poor beast? You should be carrying the donkey instead of the other way around. And so the father, the miller, and his son dismounted, and the father was thinking about what that man said. We should carry the donkey. So he got some rope, he tied up the hooves of the donkey, got a big long stick, and he threaded it through the donkey's leg, and he took one stick and he had his son get the other stick, and they were carrying their donkey upside down. The donkey was hanging upside down, and they were carrying the donkey upside down. By and by, they approached a bridge into town, and they were carrying the donkey upside down on this pole. Now, the town folks had never seen anything like this before. It was totally outrageous. They started to laugh and laugh. Look at those two. They're carrying the donkeys. Look at that. I've never seen that before in my life. Now, when the donkey heard all this commotion, the donkey got all nervous and scared and started saying, hee-haw, 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 hee-haw. And the donkey started to wrestle and move and wrestle about, and it slipped off the pole, and it splashed right into the river and washed away. And the miller and his son had to walk back home without the donkey or the money. And the miller, he turned to his son and said, "Son, let this be a lesson to you. When you try to please everyone, you end up pleasing no one."
Thank you, Andre. Maybe everyone needs that lesson from time to time, but it's good that you delivered it tonight. I'm grateful.
Thank you.
Andre, are you interested in comments?
Not particularly. Well, if you can't want to, you can. But usually, just a little bit more about myself. At the start of the pandemic, I work at a social service program for people with disabilities over in Oakland when the pandemic struck. Of course, we had to stop all in-person services because of the stay-at-home orders. And our executive director came up with the idea of, well, so we got to stay at home. How about we do Zoom classes? And she asked whether or not I wanted to do a storytelling class on Zoom. So I accepted it. And one of the things I've been doing in the class is I got this old book of Aesop fables that my mother gave me back 50 years ago. So that I use it to make crayon drawings in it, you know? So I usually do like an Aesop fable for one class a week. And then basically I learn it, tell the story once, and I discard it, you know? But at least here I can actually get a second run out of it. I may even do it the reverse, like practice stories here before I take it to my storytelling class. And I'd like to introduce here, Joe Wang is one of my storytellers and writers in our program here. And he's checking you out tonight, and he hopes that at some point.
Yeah, so, I definitely would be interested to sometimes share a story because I love to write stories. So yeah.
Very good. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Andre.
No,
you're welcome. Thank you.
Alan Kaufman from Boston area.
Hi there. So I'm going to tell a story about things that I experienced years ago when I was a kid in New York City, in Brooklyn, New York. So the story is about this little sweet Jewish boy by the name of Moishele. And Moishele lived in Brooklyn in a little apartment house and in a nice little Jewish neighborhood. And his favorite thing when he was off by himself was he loved to go to the bagel store and buy a bagel. He just loved bagels. There was something about bagels that he really liked. And his mother really knew that about him. And sometimes she could take a look at him and know that he needs a bagel, you know, because he had that look about him. And one day he had such a look, and his mother gave him a couple of coins and said, "Go." And he goes off out of the apartment house, and around the corner, it was the bagel store, Sam the Bagel Man. So he goes into the store and he waits his turn. There were two people before him. He eventually gets to the counter, and he sees Sam, the owner of the bagel store, Sam the Bagel Man. And Sam says, "Moishele, what will it be today?" Because Moishele has seen him, because Sam has seen Moishele before. And he knows that he loves bagels. So Moishele said, I think I want an everything bagel. So Sam the bagel man says, oh, good choice. And we have a fresh one right over here. And he reaches into the basket and he pulls out an everything bagel. He puts it into a little paper bag, gives it to Moishula. Moishula, meanwhile, gets the couple of coins that his mama gave him and puts it on the countertop. Sam the bagel man gives him change. And Moishula just stands there. And Sam says, is there anything else you want, Moishula, today? Anything else? And Moishula says, yes, actually, there is something else. I have a question. And Sam the bagel man says, well, what is the question? And Moishula says, you know, when you eat the bagel, when you finish the bagel, what happens to the hull? And Sam the bagel man says, oh, what a question. What a wonderful question. I'll tell you what to do. When you go home and you eat your bagel today, you take one bite of it, and then you take the second bite, take the third bite, and then when you're ready to take the last bite of the bagel, after you take that bite, put your hand over your mouth and hold it tight because the hole will be in your hand. Hold it tight and don't let go. And then when you finish the bagel, you come over to me and show me what you have. So Moshele did just that. And he went home and he ate his bagel. And when it came time for the last bite, he put his hand over his mouth and he held onto what he hoped was a hole. And he ran back to Sam the Bagel Man's store. So he runs into the store and there were two people right before him and he was standing on line and he's bouncing up and down as if he has to pee. I mean, he's so excited. Eventually he gets to the front of the counter and Sam sees him and says, oh, Moishele, you have it. Show me what you have. And Moishele puts his hand on the countertop, opens it up, and he looks in the hand. He says, oh, it's nothing. I see that it's nothing. I must have done it wrong. I must have done it wrong because there's nothing there. And tears started to come down his face. And Moishele and Sam the Bagel Man is looking at Moishele and then he motions for Mordecai, his helper, to come and said, I want you to be by the counter. I have something to do. And he runs from the counter to where Moishele is standing, grabs him by the hand and says, come with me. I have something important to talk about with you. And he goes in, and he goes with Moishele behind the counter. They sit down. Moishele is still crying. And Sam the Bagel Man says, listen, I want you to listen really carefully. Please, Moishele, don't cry, but listen carefully to what I'm saying. When you opened your hand and you said, look there, and you felt there was nothing there, there was something there. Trust me, there was something there. Maybe you didn't see it. Sometimes things you don't see, but it was really there. And it still is there. And you know what it is? It's hope. Because I saw that in your hand and I saw that in your face. You were hoping to find something in the bagel. And hope is the most important thing there is in the world, because the world couldn't survive without hope. There's hope like when you have your briefcase and you lose your briefcase and you hope you find it. And there's hope when your grandma's sick and you hope that she gets better. Hope is the most important thing there is. And hope is all around you. Hope is even inside of a bagel. So when you finish your bagel, you can look inside your bagel, and what you see, Moshula, is hope.
Thank you, Alan, for the most endearing tale of these. Oh my gosh. I would like people to raise their hand if you hadn't heard the story before that Alan just told, and if you had not heard it, and if you had an idea what was going to happen, and if it was completely different than what you found out. I'm in the camp of, I had an idea of what was going to happen, but it was completely different and inferior to what I found out.
Linda, tell me what it is, please.
Well, I was pretty sure Alan was going to have the child hold up his hand looking for the hole. And of course, his hand would have a hole, and it was that simple. I so much like the Hope rendition.
I wrote this story, by the way. It's an original story.
My next question, thank you.
Alan,
Yes.
that was the best story I've heard you tell so far. And it was good eye contact, looking straight ahead. You came off very well this time too.
Thank you, Beverly.
I'm impressed that it was your story too.
Others?
I can say that I was impressed with how I had no clue where, sorry, I had no clue where it was going. There were multiple parts of the story, not just what he would have in his hand or exactly what Alan would say, but I'm trying to remember at least one other one when I think it was Marsha that said he had a question, or just moments like that where I just had no idea where it was going. Like it could go anywhere. And I don't usually have that level of cluelessness in a story in a very good way. It was very great. It was wonderful to be completely in the dark. I had no idea what was coming. So that was great.
Thank you. Thank you also.
I loved the gentleness of it.
Thank you.
If we have,
I love stories and I love storytelling and I love Jewish stories also. There's something about ethnic stories. They don't have to be Jewish really, but especially like if you are from a particular community, there are things that you pick up that are universal really, you know, so then it might be a Jewish story, but who doesn't know about bagels, you know? There's nothing really Jewish about a bagel story. And there's something universal about hope, really. It's not really a Jewish concept. It's really a universal concept.
you know, Ellen, you put a new spin on not hope only. You put a new spin on hopelessness.
Mm.
And what a nothing or what a spiral it can be. So thank you for the insight.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Okay. Renu Narayan.
Perfect. Thank you, Linda. Okay, so here's my story. I'm sharing this for the very first time. I hope you can hear me clearly. Can you hear me? Okay. So as all stories start, a long time ago, there was an emperor in Japan who loved the sport of wrestling. Not that he liked to wrestle himself, he just liked to watch it. Now, everyone in that kingdom, all the young men, wanted to participate. They wanted to wrestle simply because the emperor had promised that the winner would get a pot of gold coins. But this wrestling match happened just once a year, and it went on for about a week. There was one thing about this emperor though. The more violent it was, the happier he would be. And so on the day of the tournament, the first day, there would be many wrestlers standing in line. And they would start. There would be so much of excitement. People would be watching from all sides. And there the emperor would be sitting on his chair on the balcony watching. One by one, the wrestlers would come, they would hold each other, they would wrestle. And sometimes the stronger ones would just throw their opponent over the ring. And most of them died. And some of them had broken bones, legs, arms. The emperor didn't care. At the end of the day, the man who won the match, the one who was the only one standing, would of course be congratulated and given the pot of gold coins. Now this went on day after day for the entire week. And by the end of the week, the wrestler, the one who won the pot of gold coins, would go home feeling very, very happy. He didn't have to work for the rest of his life. He never ever gave a thought to all the men he had killed or maimed for life. Now, there was one young man who lived on a small island away from the mainland. He had heard about the tournament and he too wanted to win that pot of gold coins. So he traveled across. He had to walk and walk for a very long time because he was poor. And when he reached the palace, there was still 2 months to go. And so he decided he would go up a mountain and he would practice. Now, as he was walking up the mountain, he saw a young woman ahead of him. And he was surprised because she was carrying a big pot of water and balancing it with just one hand. Now, he wanted to surprise her. So he went slowly behind her. Kichiku, he said. And he tickled her, hoping that she would drop that pot. But to his surprise, she brought down her elbow so hard on his hand that it was trapped right against her body. He tried and tried to pull it off, but he couldn't. He said, "Hey, young woman, let me go. I was only trying to tease you." But the young woman did not even turn to look at him. She kept walking, and the young man kept talking. She was walking, he was talking. Then he said, "Listen, let me go. If I use all my strength, you will lose your pot and your life." She just continued walking and he kept talking. And this went on and on and on till they were right at the top of that mountain. That's when she let him go. And just as he was standing there, he heard a voice from inside the small cottage. And his eyes opened up in surprise when he saw a woman who was older than that young woman coming out of the cottage with a big bathtub and a stove balanced on her head. "I was just cleaning the house," she said, and gently took off the stove and the bathtub and placed it on the porch. Before he could say anything, he heard another voice. He looked towards the small hill, and there was this old woman, this tiny old woman, coming down the path holding a cow in her arms. And as he watched, she came down and said, "Oh, Lily White, you're back." "Yes, Grandma, I'm back and I brought a guest with me." Grandma smiled. She put the cow down very, very gently and she said, "Poor thing, hurt her leg. I didn't want her to walk down. So now I'm going to put her in the shed and take care of her." This young man didn't know what was happening. So he looked at the young woman and said, "What's happening? How are you all so strong?" She smiled and she said, "Well, we've been living up on this mountain for many years now. We've been breathing the fresh mountain air and we exercise. But Where are all the men? He asked. The men are all gone. You must have heard about the emperor. He's always waging wars. And all the men who go to fight those wars never come back. So we women decided that we had to develop our strength to take care of ourselves. Would you please train me too? He asked. Of course, but you'll have to stay right here and help us do all the chores around the place. He agreed. And from that day on, every day he did all the work, carrying water, cleaning the hut, cleaning everything. And that day she said, one evening, now you just watch what's going to happen. The three of them got together in front of the hut. First, the daughter threw up her mother up in the air. The young man just stood there. What was going to happen? But before her grandmother reached the ground, she had caught her. And then she threw her up again. And it was more like a dance. Every time she threw her, and then she would catch her and throw her up. And every time she caught her so very gently. And then she would put her down on the ground. And it was not just the grandma. The grandma picked up the granddaughter. The daughter picked up her mother. And it was like all three of them were dancing. They were wrestling, but it was more like a dance. The young man just stood there and watched. He said, please, teach me how to do this. First, you shall start with grandma. She's the gentlest among us. And so from that next day on, grandma and he wrestled, and he learned the subtle art of wrestling without hurting the opponent. And days and weeks went by. He had learned everything that he had to learn from the three of them. The time had come to go back and participate in the tournament. So he went down that mountain. He went and stood in the line. And when it was his turn, he walked into the ring. Everyone laughed because he was not big, he was not strong. He didn't look very capable of wrestling. But he stood his ground, calm and quiet. The wrestler came charging towards him, very sure that he would just get rid of this young man in no time at all. But to his surprise, the young man grabbed him around his waist, threw him up in the air. Everybody gasped. Oh! But as the eyes came down, the young man caught the wrestler in his arms and very gently put him on the ground. People just watched. And wrestler after wrestler came to participate. But each time, the young man did the same. And soon all the wrestlers were enjoying themselves. They were trying their best to get back into the ring and wrestle with this wonderful man because it was like a dance. It was like a dance, and he was dancing with all of them. And in the end, they all withdrew from the competition. They said, you are the winner. Now the emperor, who had been watching this, was furious. He said, what's happening? Not a single man had been hurt. You are the champion today. Take the pot of gold coins, but never, ever come back here again. The young man took the pot of gold coins and he shared them with every single wrestler there. He just kept 3 coins for himself. He said goodbye and went back up that mountain. He told them, I have won the tournament, but it's all because of 3 of you. I don't ever want to leave this mountain. May I please live with you here? 3 of them looked at each other and said, why not? And that's where he lived for the rest of his life. Thank you.
Thank you for your debut. Thank you for having it be at Mixed Bag.
Thank you, Linda. I hope if you have any suggestions, please tell me, because I'd like to improve on my telling.
I love it.
I think it was a beautiful story and very well paced. I thought your expressions were great. You just, I was able to just stay right with the story, and it was quite extraordinary. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alan. Were you able to visualize it? Were you able to visualize it?
Yes,
Yes.
oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
yes. Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Renu, I always love your telling. I'm curious where the story is from. Is it yours?
No, it's not. I actually, somebody had mentioned the stories. I looked it up on the net and I found it. And it's just a story that's been written. So I sort of added a little bit of drama to it. I mean, everybody does that, right? So you can find it. I will share the link. You can find it very easily. It's, I'll share the link here. So I just found the story about a week ago and I've not practiced it. So I thought I must practice it here with you first. I mean, I'm most comfortable with this group. I think even Babs has said the same thing. I think I'm very, very comfortable because I feel everyone is here to appreciate each other. And the bigger the crowd is, then, the less chances of getting to tell. And also I feel a bit more conscious of myself. So I think here is the perfect, because I'm always looking forward to this, this third Monday of every month. So thank you, Linda. I think I fell in love with this group the very first time I joined.
You're welcome. Vicky Ness, Sebastopol,
In California.
California, not Russia.
No, there was a beautiful neighborhood. All the lawns were clean and bright, and all the flowers bloomed in beautiful color. All the windows were clear and crisp and clean. Everything was gorgeous, and everybody in the neighborhood believed they were living the good life. Now, the good life comes with a price. What it means is that you have to pay attention to your obligations so that all your connections can help you get where you want to go. And it means you have to work late sometimes so you can have the money so you can get the car that you really want. It means that you live for your very long to-do list because you've got to look good, sound good, and be of angelic persuasion. Everything must be perfect, and that's living the good life. And everybody bought this idea of the good life, except for Edith. Edith lived in the same neighborhood, and she and Abner were having lunch one day, and Edith just decided she wasn't buying it. That's not the good life. She wasn't buying it. So she went out to the garage, and she got herself a ladder and boom, up against the side of the garage. Then she went and got a bag and a bottle, and she climbed up the ladder until she was at the apex of the roof with one foot on one side, one foot on the other in her little yoga outfit. And in this hand, she had a squishy bottle of glue, which she squeezed all over herself, sort of the way you might put on suntan lotion on a sunny beach. Squeeze, squish, 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 till she was covered in glue. Then she took the bag, which was actually an open feather pillow, and she shook it over her head so all the white feathers came down, flying this way and that like a snowstorm, swirling and twirling until she was covered in white feathers. And she raised her wings and she looked off into the horizon and she said, I want to fly. And she started flapping, and she started flapping, and she flapped, flap, 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 flap. Flap, 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 flap as hard as she could. She kept flapping until all of a sudden, she rose up in the air. Oh, and she kept flapping, 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 and she rose up higher, and she made it right across the lawn, straight into the maple bush that was right there at the end of the driveway, and the whole thing shook. Abner, she said. And Abner, her husband, was a very good soul, and he came out and helped her out of the shrubbery, covered in feathers. The neighbors were pretty amused. Did you see what she tried? Did you see this? Ah! Oh my goodness. Oh, oh, that's so silly. Edith, for her part, didn't care. She went home. And a couple of weeks later, Edith had had enough again. And out to the garage she went, and boom went the ladder. Then she went back in the house and she got a bag and she got a bottle and she climbed up the ladder till she was at the apex of the roof with one foot on one side and one foot on the other in her little sweatsuit. And the wind was picking up and the fall leaves were starting to rustle. And she took her squishy bottle of glue and she went all over, squeeze, 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 glue everywhere. Then she took the bag and she raised it up over her head and it was filled with turkey feathers, which fell down like fall leaves. Beautiful. This way and that in the breeze, the wind would pick up and swirl them, russets and deep, deep browns and warm beiges, all these beautiful stripes falling all over her until she was covered in them. As the wind picked up, she positioned herself and she looked off into the horizon and she said, I want to fly. And she raised her wings and she flapped them, 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 flap, 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 flap. Flap, 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 up she went, up she went, up she went, there she went, oh, 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 oh. And pretty soon she was wheeling around the neighborhood and she got right out of the county before she got tired and wound up face down in a cornfield on the other side of the county. She had her cell phone with her and she called Abner. Can you come get me? Abner was a good man. He got in his car, drove out, brought her back, covered in old corn silk and dead leaves and turkey feathers. By this time, the neighbors weren't even hiding how funny they thought she was. You don't even need a scarecrow. Oh, she's funny. Oh, that's funny. And they were doing little online things with their cameras, taking pictures. Oh my goodness, she's so silly. But then they had things they wanted to do and things they wanted to get and things they needed to do. And so they all dispersed. Edith didn't care. She went back in the house. And a couple of weeks later, into the garage she goes, boom, with a ladder against the side of the garage. And here she comes with a bag and bottle. And she climbs up until she's up on top of the roof with one foot on one side and one foot on the other. She's got her squishy bottle. Glue, squeeze, 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 till she's covered in glue. But this time when she raised up the bag, it was enormous black iridescent feathers that shone like lacquered gondolas, moving this way and that in the late November wind, spinning like beautiful boats in a maelstrom, flying up and back down until eventually they landed all over her. So Edith positioned herself covered in feathers and she looked at the horizon and she said, not I want to fly, just I am. And she raised up her wings and she held it. And the wind picked her up. Gently, gently up. And pretty soon she was sailing over the neighborhood, doing wheelies over the playground. Whee! Oh boy! Spinning around, doing dives and rising up and twirling like an Olympic skater on ice. Just the most beautiful, graceful thing. Correcting this way, correcting that way, swooping down, rising up until she landed at the very top of the biggest tree in the neighborhood. And there she clung. And she looked down at all the neighbors, who by this time had come out of their houses, and they were unamused. There was a big, big thing in the tree, and they wanted it out of here. The big thing out of here. What is that thing? We got to get rid of that. Oh. That thing, said Abner, is my wife, and you will leave her alone. People pulled back, but still, the big thing scared the daylights out of them. So they made the kids go indoors, and they held their little Chihuahua mixes close to them. What is that thing gonna do? What is that thing gonna do? Well, now, if they had had pitchforks and torches, it would have been a really ugly thing, but instead they had cell phones. So they called animal services. Come and get the thing up in the tree. And here comes a green van with a lovely picture of a little fawn and a raccoon and a bear, and it says animal protection, and it pulls up, and here comes the man out of the truck. He says, hey folks, what's happening? And they're all like, what? Do you see what's happening? Do you see that lump up there in that tree? It's going to eat our puppies and chase our children. It's an awful thing. Oh man, he said, you've got a California condor. You know, they're beautiful. Oh, you're so lucky. You people are so lucky. She's a beautiful bird. Oh, you're so lucky. I've never seen one in person. Oh my gosh. And they all stood around and they said, no. You need to get rid of the thing in the tree. That's what we pay you for. Get rid of the thing in the tree. No, he said, no, that's a protected species. Okay, they're endangered. That would be no. Okay, so I'm leaving now. You guys are lucky. You need to know this. And he got back into his van. As he's whistling, he turns on the van. And suddenly he sees, pressed against the glass, really angry faces. So he lowers the window. Hi. He said, listen, you have to get rid of that thing in the tree. And he said, you know, I can't. Okay, I wouldn't and I can't. And you need to know, condors don't bother the living. Okay, they eat dead things. Okay, so if you're alive, you're good. If you're not, you're not. Okay, they only bother the living in the window. And he drove off, which left the neighbors ambling back under the tree, grumbling about, what are we paying taxes for? Is this Mayor Weasley? No, it's that supervisor woman, that eco-crazy woman. Under the tree, they grumbled and grumbled. Up in the top of the tree was Edith. She was preening her feathers. Then she flapped her wings and rustled her body and settled back down. And she looked back down at everybody surrounding her. But the more she looked, the more closely she looked, she began to get a beady eye on quite a few of them. And that made the people nervous, because it occurred to them, looking up at Edith the condor, that just maybe she could tell the difference between those people who really were leading a good life and those people who really weren't living at all.
I loved it.
Good.
I loved it too, Vicki. Thank you. Vicki Ness.
Love